Good evening. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Board meeting. Thank you for joining us tonight, and I'll call this meeting to order. Our board clerk, Julie Mitchell, will take roll call for this evening.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, Andy Coe is absent this evening, but the following board members are present: Sal Camarada, Boshana Etten, Chris Johnson, Mike Roselli, Jeff Moncrief, Sean McAndrew, and Ken George.
Thank you. The Cary Community Plan will continue to be the guiding document for this board. Our role is to function as citizen advisors to the council, who will ultimately make the final decision on all rezoning activities. We recognize that not all rezoning activities or requests are supported unanimously by members of our community, but we strive to balance the impact of increased building density required to support Cary's growth while maintaining the historic charm and character of the town of Cary. The Cary Community Plan was initially developed in 2017 through a very thoughtful and collaborative effort between Cary's citizens and our town government. The chapters of the plan include live, work, shop, engage, shape, move, serve, and act. The community plan can be found on the town's website. Your citizen opinions based on the Cary Community Plan document play a very important role in advising our leaders. We encourage our citizens to refer to the plan and provide feedback that's based on guiding principles of the plan as it relates to the zoning request in question. While this is a public meeting, it is not a public hearing. There's no opportunity for the public to speak during this meeting. If you have comments about any of these items, we encourage you to reach out to staff by email or phone. You may also reach out to board members through email. You may also contact council directly through email or during the public speaks out portion of any regularly scheduled town meeting. These meetings may be streamed live on the Town of Cary website and will be posted to YouTube. All past Planning and Zoning Board meetings are available to view on YouTube. At this point, we would be looking to adopt the agenda for tonight. I would look for a motion from someone to adopt the agenda.
Motion.
Motion. Second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then we also need to approve our regular minutes from our previous meeting. So if I could have a motion to approve the minutes from December 16th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor? All right, the motion carries. We'll move on to our first case, 22 REZ Bachelor Road and 1009 Naughty Oaks Drive. Our first case, as just mentioned, is 22 REZ 03. Rachel Smith, Principal Planner, will share the staff's presentation. Following the presentation, the applicant will share their remarks. All board members will have an opportunity to ask questions of staff and the applicant. Ms. Smith, you may proceed.
It's not working.
There we go. Thank you. Good evening, Board. This is a rezoning request for approximately 19.36 acres located on the western edge of Cary and the Chatham and Wake County line. The property is a half-mile north of the Green Level West Road and a half-mile to the west of the American Tobacco Trail. The southeast corner of the site has frontage at the terminus of Bachelor Road, where it connects to Naughty Oaks Drive. Bachelor Road provides the only point of public street access. East of the site is the Shadow Creek neighborhood. To the southeast is the Courtyards at White Oak site for 170 dwelling units. The rezoning case was approved by council last Thursday. Further southeast is the approved Green Level Trail development, which is presently under construction for 203 dwelling units. To the south and west of the site are low-density residential developments in unincorporated Chatham and Wake County. The applicant has offered a zoning condition to build the portion of the Woodhull Greenway Trail running through the site, as shown on the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Master Plan. This segment is approximately 1,500 feet long and will tie into the larger trail network planned for the area. To the southeast of the site, a section of the Jacobs Creek Greenway connecting to the American Tobacco Trail is presently under construction. The Courtyards developer has also committed to building the intervening segment of the Jacobs Creek Greenway, as well as a 10-foot street-side trail on Bachelor Road. Collectively, provide multimodal connectivity residents of the subject site to the American Tobacco Trail. Bachelor Road is a 2-lane local roadway in unincorporated Wake County. It is a half-mile long and is maintained by the North Carolina Department of Transportation, NCDOT. No curb and gutter, nor bicycle or pedestrian facilities exist. The future cross-section would call for curb, gutter, and a 5-foot sidewalk on at least one side of the roadway. Further to the south of the site, Bachelor changes to a collector street classification and terminates at Green Level West Road. This photo was taken from Naughty Drive, looking west at the subject site and the terminus of Bachelor Road at Naughty Oaks Drive. While Bachelor Road is an NCDOT roadway, Naughty Oaks is under Cary's jurisdiction. The site is adjacent to Cary's corporate limits with Wake County Residential 40 watershed and Chatham County Residential 1 zoning. An annexation petition is under concurrent review. The applicant is proposing to zone the entirety of the site Residential 12 conditional use via the application of initial Town of Cary zoning. The proposed zoning conditions include limiting the use to 30 detached dwellings. Lot sizes will be calculated outside of any riparian buffers. The developer is committing to build the Greenway Trail running through the site, locating the community gathering space adjacent to the trail, and providing pedestrian access to the trail from the internal street network. The community gathering space of 5,000 square feet will exceed the LDO minimum for a development of this size, otherwise 4,000 square feet by 1,000 square feet. Current and proposed provide additional connectivity in the area. The Green Level Trail developer recently constructed the extension of Yates Store Road north from Green Level West Road and portions of Jasper Olive Road. They are working with Cary on the final steps associated with the construction timeline. Now that the rezoning case is approved, the Courtyards at White Oak developer is working on their development plan submittal, which includes the intervening section of Jasper Olive Road, which will connect to Bachelor Road just to the south of the site. These roadways will collectively provide a secondary route to Green Level West Road for the subject site and the Shadow Creek neighborhood. Staff has evaluated the rezoning request against the Imagine Cary community plan. First, we note the western portion of the site is located within the Chatham-Cary Joint Land Use Plan low-density residential area, which recommends densities not to exceed 2 dwellings per acre. The plan's guiding principles include balancing growth and development, preserving the area's character, and minimizing water quality impacts to the Jordan Lake Reservoir, with the provision of public utility service used as a tool to guide growth. The rezoning's proposed 1.55 dwellings per acre is consistent with the plan's low-density residential guidance. Additionally, a small portion of the site, as shown by the blue star, is located within the Green Level Special Planning Area, neighborhoods west of Flat Branch sub-area. This special planning area supports a gradual downward transition in density, moving west from NC 540 towards the Chatham County line, with areas west of the Flat Branch stream not to exceed about 2.5 dwelling units per acre. Additional policy guidance includes shielding development from thoroughfares, providing context-sensitive design, and a predominant land use of detached dwellings on lot sizes of 1/4 acre or more. The proposed R12 zoning with 12,000 square feet lots is not out of keeping with the area's current land use pattern and generally meets the policy guidance of the special planning area and the live in shape chapters. When looking at the engaged chapter, we note the commitment to build the Greenway Trail may help to meet the plan's objective to provide citizens with a high-quality greenway network. Further, the applicant is providing commitments to locate the community gathering space adjacent to the trail, provide pedestrian connectivity from the internal street network. When looking at the served chapter, the proposal includes community gathering space of 5,000 square feet, 1,000 square feet more than the LDO requirement, which may provide additional open space. When looking at the MOVE chapter, we note that adjacent development is helping to build out additional roadway connectivity to the site. However, the timing relative to the construction of this proposal remains a bit uncertain. The intervening portion of Jasper Olive Road, which will connect Bachelor Road to Yates Road and Green Level West Road, is subject to the Courtyards at White Oak Development Plan approval, and then construction by a developer unaffiliated with this rezoning request. Until this segment is built and online, only Bachelor Road would be available to handle construction traffic. Once there are alternatives to Bachelor Road, concerns regarding pedestrian safety and traffic are largely mitigated. A neighborhood meeting was held on April 6th of 2022, followed by a voluntary second neighborhood meeting on March 13th of 2024. A second meeting is encouraged to update neighbors when there is a lapse in time. There were 24 attendees at the first meeting and 6 attendees at the second meeting. Questions and concerns expressed at the meetings included construction traffic, speeding, LDO requirements, stormwater, buffers, and the development scope, layout, and price of the proposed homes. There has been intermittent but ongoing communication for neighbors since the neighborhood meetings related to the impact of traffic, the maintenance jurisdiction of Bachelor Road, and the desire for the construction of the trail network in the area. At the Town Council public hearing in November, there were no written comments and no public speakers. Council asked about other current development proposals within the area and discussed the collective impacts of multiple projects that do not individually trigger traffic studies. The council directed staff to investigate cumulative traffic studies. Transportation staff has begun looking into this request. Additionally, council members had positive feedback regarding the commitment to construct the Greenway amenity. There have been no changes to the request since the Town Council public hearing. The following are staff observations regarding the Imagine Cary community plan. The proposed use of detached dwellings at 1.55 dwellings per acre is in keeping with the densities and use recommended by the Chatham-Cary Land Use Plan, the Green Level Special Planning Area, as well as the Live and Shape chapters. In terms of the Engage chapter, the commitment to building the Greenway Trail through the site will provide enhanced non-motorized connectivity to residents. Finally, in terms of the Move chapter, we note the ongoing development of the roadway network in the area. Some degree of uncertainty due to the timing of unaffiliated development, concerns regarding the impact of additional homes and construction traffic on Bachelor Road will be largely mitigated when secondary connectivity to Green Level West Road is available. This is likely to occur in the near future. This concludes my presentation. The applicant's representative, Ashley Honeycutt-Terrazas, is available to provide comments, and I'm available to answer your questions.
Thank you, Rachel. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Board. My name is Ashley Honeycutt-Terrazas with Parker Poe, 301 Fayetteville Street in Raleigh, here tonight on behalf of the applicant, Shenandoah Homes. Thank you, Rachel. That was a very thorough overview, so I'm just going to hit a few points here and talk about a little bit about those updates that Rachel mentioned and how they kind of tie into this case. So a quick high-level overview. Shenandoah's intent for this 19-acre property is to build a relatively small, low-density residential neighborhood with large high-end homes. Very similar to the adjacent Shadow Creek neighborhood, immediately adjacent to this site and other smaller neighborhoods they've built in western Cary. Most recently, Autumnwood North, just to the east of this site, and then the coming Augusta development. You may remember that case, that annexation and zoning was also approved last week. So the staff report notes, and it may go without saying, but this type of housing is still very much in demand in this area and is not being built at the rate that it was in the past. So like its other neighborhoods, Shenandoah wants this neighborhood to be in Cary. Annexation and development in Cary ensures that this property will be developed under Cary's higher standards and be consistent with Cary's future plans for this area. The residents will have access to Cary's public utilities, water and sewer, better for public health. In other words, they want to build a 30-lot subdivision in Cary and not a lower density in Chatham County. The R12 CU zoning for the property, which is consistent with Cary's future plans, as outlined in the Cary Community Plan and the Green Level Special Planning Area, Chatham-Cary Joint Land Use Plan, and the conditions that we've worked on with staff over the past months make the proposed zoning and the future development it would allow even more consistent with those plans. The staff report notes that the proposed zoning district's minimum lot sizes are in line and in keeping with the two adjacent Cary neighborhoods, and Rachel just went over that. The first two zoning conditions limit the use and the density. We've also added conditions very typical in the green level area to calculate the lot sizes outside the riparian buffers that may be located on the property at development plan, which keeps the development even further away from these environmentally sensitive areas than the LDO already requires, as well as additional community gathering space, which we've committed to locate adjacent to that greenway to further enhance that public recreational amenity. And finally, we've added conditions to provide a pedestrian connection to and build approximately 1,500 linear feet of that public greenway, as has been shown on Cary's Parks and Recreation Master Plan since about 2012. So that's been in the plan for a while. Shenandoah is committed to build this section, not just dedicate an easement for future greenway, which some other neighborhoods have done. And developing this property in Cary means that an important piece of that recreational puzzle for current and future residents is built. So, like Rachel mentioned, there's several other pieces of the development puzzle that are which are relevant to this case that have come into place since the public hearing on this case in November. So the Epcot homes, courtyards at White Oak, age-restricted townhomes, and smaller lot residential annexation and zoning across the street on Bachelor. I don't know if I can point to it, but that was approved by Town Council last Thursday. And so you'll recall that large site has frontage on Bachelor, but it also has frontage on the new Yates Store Road 4-lane thoroughfare that has been built by the Green Level Trail Development, and the courtyard's approved zoning conditions make a couple of commitments that are relevant to this smaller project we're discussing tonight. So first, with respect to courtyard's connection and traffic to Bachelor Road, that their maximum density is 170 units, so it's obviously a much larger project. When Yates Store Road is extended to the site, they must install barriers to prevent access on Bachelor through the 150th certificate of occupancy of 170. So that Yates Store Road extension has, like Rachel mentioned, it is built. When you look at it looks like they've recorded their Phase 1 plat, and you can see it when you pull up GIS. The right-of-way is there, and the lots for their Phase 1 are there on GIS and the Cary property research map. So there is right-of-way there now for Yates Store Road. Thus, they will not connect any traffic to Bachelor Road until the very end of their project development, at which point, when those barriers would come down, that second point of access, like Rachel mentioned, that Jasper Olive Road, the east-west connector, would from Bachelor to Yates Store will already be built with their project. And when these larger nearby projects are built with the availability of new Cary thoroughfares and collector streets, we can anticipate that the new residents will likely be using those streets for access. But setting those larger developments that have their own improved access aside, when this small neighborhood is built, it will only produce conservatively 25 to 30-ish vehicular trips during the peak hours, according to the ITE manual, which is much less than NCDOT's stated capacity for Bachelor Road, and we submitted a traffic memo from DRMP on that earlier this year. So again, this 30 larger lot single-family project on its own has a relatively small impact in terms of traffic generation. The second aspect of the courtyard's approval that Rachel mentioned that's relevant to this case is the 10-foot side path on Bachelor Road that they committed to, which again is directly in front of this site, and our team and staff have thought about maybe bringing the Greenway Trail that kind of goes straight through this site over to meet Bachelor Road, so there would be continuous pedestrian connectivity from this neighborhood, and it would go all the way over to the American Trail through that trail network that Rachel showed up on the screen just now. So that was something we wanted to talk about with this board. We don't have it in the zoning conditions yet, but that's just something we had been talking about. And while this 30-home piece of the development puzzle won't make a huge impact in terms of new vehicular connectivity in the area, it will provide an important piece of pedestrian connectivity in Western Cary via that greenway trail that will be accessible to current and future residents. Just to wrap it up, this is the type of development that's envisioned, still needed in this area, and it should be a part of Cary's growth and plans for the western part of the town. And thank you very much, and we're looking forward to the discussion. Thanks.
Great, thank you. All right, well, the Cary plan is in place to guide the development of the town of Cary. As you think about your questions, keep in mind how this proposed case fits or does not fit the community plan. When making a motion, it would be helpful to describe how you see your motion impacting the Cary community plan. For example, the work, shape, or live chapters. While it's not a requirement, it would help town council understand how you think this case applies to the plan. And so with that, I would say, do any board members have any questions? And I guess I'll just start, Mike, with you. We'll go down this way, and then we'll head down the other way.
I don't have any questions right this second.
Okay. Chris, anything?
I guess a quick question. For the street connectivity, I know you said I assume that, is this going to be, or do we know, is this just going to be basically taking Bachelor Road, single street through the parcel? Or is there going to be other streets that tee off of that? Or is that unknown at this time?
So development plan and lot layout has not been provided at this
Okay.
time.
Is there any desire, I know this is kind of unique, being on the Wake-Chatham County line, has there been any discussion or conversation about a desire to have any east-west connectivity to the Neodak Road? That was more at a
So
town staff
I am
level.
aware of some discussions. It was not a popular connection from Neodak Road east to west. I can say that, but development plan will have connectivity requirements.
Yeah, I mean, I would not be surprised if some of the owners might be against it, but just curious if there'd been cross-coordination between Chatham County and Wake County.
Sorry, are you referring to a future collector or?
Yeah, well, any kind of east-western connectivity from this parcel out west versus just the one south connection.
So when the development plan comes in, they would be required to extend Bachelor Road towards their western property line. And there might be another connectivity to the north or a second connection to the west, depending on the block lengths.
Okay, you said it would be extended into the site
Through the site to their western property line.
to the western property line?
Yeah.
Okay,
Whether it goes straight through or whether it forms another intersection internally, we don't know that yet.
okay. So there would be some sort of, I guess, stub?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I had.
Okay, thanks. Bashan?
Mine was just like, I'm just curious for the community space that you guys are mentioning. What is that? I know it's not really zoning maybe per se, but I'm just curious, what are you guys envisioning as that community space along the greenway? Is it just like a green, lawn? Or is there some other thoughts there? That's all.
Michael Jessica, engineer on the project. We've done a bunch of community spaces lately. Can't commit to anything at this moment, but we've done outside exercise equipment, gazebos, gathering spaces, more than just a patch of lawn that we're calling open space. So we'll pretty it up for the community.
Okay, great. I just wanted to see if it was going to be a little bit more than just, green space.
Yeah.
That was.
And sites more than 15 acres, they will offer that the LDO does require that they be amenitized in various ways.
Great. That's it for me.
Great, thanks. Al?
Yeah, can I see the slides on the greenways? I want to understand what they're building again.
This slide?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. So are they building everything circled in red? Or I'm white, I'm sorry?
No, that
Okay.
would be the participation of both the green level trail development, which is going to be the eastern side, and then also the courtyards, which was approved on Thursday. So the
Okay.
far left circle is
Yeah.
the commitment through their
The
site
north.
that they're offering.
The north-south,
Correct.
yeah. Okay. And they presented something as it related to some discussions about the greenway. Is is there expectation that that would become part of the zoning conditions?
We are always up to continuing conversation about zoning conditions. So the way it is right now, you can see that this is just the general alignment that's shown on the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. At the time of development plan, there is some maneuverability that, in ways that make sense to provide connectivity. So whether it's a zoning condition or at the time of development plan, I do anticipate that we will aspire to make the proper connections in the network.
Okay, thank you.
Sean, any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Ruben?
Couple questions. You mentioned 30 trips in the peak hour, and there's 30 homes. I'm curious what the estimated number of residents per home might be that was based on.
So the ITE manual is done by the land use category. It's not by the size of the household. Now, there are some adjustments that are made for things like dedicated senior living, for instance, but it would be a single family would be the generator.
Single family. So what I recall from that manual is it's about 9 trips per home per day, which seems to me there'd be more than 1 trip per house per peak hour. Maybe not a significant number, but that just seems a little low to me.
So that was the applicant's assertion. I did not make that
Okay.
statement.
And I'm curious about the, it seems to me like a low neighborhood response. How many, like, local neighbor letters are sent out to say this is coming and this is when the public meetings are going to be, like the catchment area for the mailing?
Sure, yeah, so the LDO requires 100 feet, and we do 800 feet.
Okay. Do you know what that number worked out to in this case, approximately?
I don't remember. I apologize. We
And I
can
think
get that
somebody-
information for you.
I think I heard a comment that there was some feedback that neighbors felt like their concerns were being addressed adequately. Did y'all say that?
I did not say that.
Okay. The negative comments about traffic remained?
They've been intermittent and ongoing in
Okay.
terms of comments.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Diane?
No questions.
Ken?
Chris got my first question, but I do want to clarify on the connection to Neodak Road. We got that little spot that won't be zoned. There's be another future development perhaps in between the end of Neodak Road and this. So that there's potentially a future connectivity. You're saying that future connectivity would, if there's a stub, it would stub for the intention of eventually going to Neodak Road. Okay, I want to be sure that was, the stub would be headed to, that would be the spot. So I got a nod yes there for the minutes. Then on the connection, there's a little fuzziness that I detected on the connection to the 10-foot Bachelor Road that we voted on or was approved, I guess, by the council last week. Would there be a reason not to connect it to that 10-foot? The point would be to be connected to that 10-foot, but there was something fuzzy about how it was connected. What was the statement? There was some statement about it was still under discussions about connecting to the 10-foot?
Oh, we just don't have a development plan that lays out the
But
exact
it will be.
connection. Yeah, they'll be.
But it will be, okay.
That's-
Yeah, sure, I just assumed it would be. Okay, that's all I've got.
All right. I only had one question, and it's maybe more generic than specific, but when it relates to the broader context of a traffic study, what's the timeline? Because it said council, we're exploring that. Kind of what's the process for exploration and the timeline for having some discussion around, whether or not that's relevant in this case?
So we just started looking at that, and we're going to do research in Wake County jurisdictions to understand, if any other jurisdiction has triggers for smaller rezonings going on, and if they are looking at cumulative impacts. That's the first step in the process for us, and I would anticipate that probably another 4 to 6 weeks for that to be completed.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions that come to mind from anyone in the group? If not, I think there's an opportunity now to make a motion, and the motion is in your packet if you're so inclined.
I move that the board find 22 REZ 03 is consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans for the reasons set forth in the staff report, presentation, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Is there a second?
A second.
All right, we've got a second. So just last opportunity for any discussion. Sal, do you want to make any comments?
I think this development fits where it is. I like the fact that they've exceeded the density minimums, and I like the fact that they've exceeded the open space requirement also. I think they've done a good job.
Bashan, anything else?
No, I have to agree with Sal. The greenway connectivity is really great, and the open space. The fact that you added an extra 1,000 square feet is great.
Great. Chris, anything?
Nope.
You good? Mike?
I think the 1.5 dwelling units per acre works with the land use plan. So,
Gotcha.
Support it.
Sean?
I agree with what everyone said.
All right. Ruben?
No further comment.
All right. Diane?
I think I do have a question about just if there's anything triggered or any issues to be considered being in Chatham County, like between it being Cary and Chatham mixing. Is there any issues to be considered there with that mix?
So we do provide notice of the annexation public hearing and then the approval to Chatham County. We do have jurisdictional and cross-jurisdictional agreements that we adhere to. From a functional perspective, it is possible, that the taxing could be a little bit interesting, but that property is already split between Wake County and Chatham County.
Thank you.
Ken?
So I do like having this, we're out in the western part where there's low density, but the lot sizes are still small enough for people to not have to keep up a big lot. I think that's a positive thing. I think in the old days, we might have said, 2 per acre or 20,000 square foot lots. We just need to make sure we're in that. And it's just great that we've got the opportunity, because then they don't have to keep up that big lot, but yet there's sparsely destined. I think it's a great use of 12,000 CU. It's great
Right.
use.
And I would concur with what the remainder of the board is saying. Obviously, the connectivity of the Greenway, the improvements on Bachelor Road with curbs and gutter and so on and so forth, low density. So I too think that this is, something that just keeps in consistency with what the already, other projects that have been approved in the area. So I guess we'll give it an opportunity for a vote now. So the motion's on the floor, and so all those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to our second case for the evening. So we've got on the agenda 24 REZ 09-107 MedCon Court rezoning, and Aaron Puckett is at the podium. Our principal planner will share the staff's presentation. Following that presentation, the applicant will share their remarks. All board members will have an opportunity to ask questions of the staff and the applicant. And Ms. Puckett, you may proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, Board. This is a request to rezone approximately .8 acres located at 107 MedCon Court. The site is located just east of the intersection of Kildare Farm Road and MedCon Court and is surrounded by office and detached residential uses. There is an existing building on the site, which was built in 1974 and was previously used to provide emergency medical services by a nonprofit group called Cary Area EMS. This site was the only Cary Area EMS location. However, they also operated ambulances out of a number of area fire stations. In 2021, Wake County ended its contract with Cary Area EMS, which subsequently ended its emergency response services. I want to note that Cary did not lose any response preparedness with the ending of that contract, as Wake County replaced area ambulances with their own at that time. Cary Area EMS has since become Community Emergency Medical Training and Preparedness, a nonprofit that offers emergency training to organizations and individuals. The LDO permits public safety station uses in residential districts, but not separate office or training uses, so a rezoning is needed to allow reuse of the building or of the site for these other non-residential uses. There are no planned greenways in proximity to the site, and the nearest park is Rose Street Park, approximately 0.2 miles to the west. MedCon Court is a local street which currently lacks sidewalk on either side, but is otherwise built out to its ultimate cross-section. Go Cary Route 5 runs along Kildare Farm Road to the west, with a stop approximately 700 feet away from the subject site. The existing zoning is R12, and the site is also within the mixed-use overlay district. The previous use of the site as a public safety station was a permitted use in the existing residential zoning district. The applicant proposes to rezone the site to office and institutional conditional use and to remove the mixed-use overlay district. The applicant has offered one zoning condition to limit use of the site to office, governmental office, and trade school, which would be capped at 20 students and 2 classrooms. Trade school is a special use in the office and institutional district, so should the site develop with a trade school, a special use permit would be required, subject to approval by the Zoning Board of Adjustment. An analysis against the Cary Community Plan finds that policies in the Work, Shape, and Serve chapters apply most directly. The Work chapter notes retaining and growing Cary businesses is important. The proposed rezoning would allow for more flexibility with reuse of the site, since the existing residential zoning limits use of the site and of the existing building. Regarding the Shape chapter, the policy addressing infill encourages the redevelopment of underperforming sites. The proposed rezoning would allow reuse of the building or redevelopment of the site, which is no longer being used as a public safety station. The use as an office or a trade school would be similar or potentially less impactful to nearby residential uses than the former public safety station, so this does appear to make a reasonable use transition. And the proposed rezoning does not specifically offer conditions that directly address serve policies, but staff note that there appear to be some mature trees on the site, although buffers are not consistent with today's requirements. Should the building be demolished and rebuilt in the future, the current LDO requirements for plantings would then need to be met. The Future Growth Framework designates the site as being within a commercial mixed-use center and also on the edge of a heritage neighborhood. These areas can support a variety of non-residential uses, although low-rise office uses are not specifically recommended within commercial mixed-use centers. However, the edges between Future Growth Framework categories are not meant to be interpreted strictly. In this case, on the edge of a heritage neighborhood, which supports small commercial and civic uses on its periphery, a small office or trade school appears to be overall consistent with the transition area between these two categories. A neighborhood meeting was held in August of 2024, and 7 citizens attended. They had questions about the rezoning process and the need for a rezoning of this site, as well as questions about the potential future uses and parking for those uses. After the neighborhood meeting, staff did receive 2 follow-up emails, simply seeking additional information. A public hearing was held in November 2024. There were no citizen comments at the public hearing, and council did not voice questions or concerns. There have been no changes since the hearing. Staff's preliminary finding is that the proposal meets a number of policies in the Imagine Cary Community Plan. This includes the work policy to help retain Cary businesses by allowing additional small non-residential uses on this site. This is also related to the shape policy regarding infill and redevelopment, and the limited uses proposed appear to maintain the existing use transition between non-residential uses to the west and detached residential neighborhoods to the east. And while the proposed uses would be less intense than those otherwise recommended by the Future Growth Framework designation of commercial mixed-use center, the location on the border of a heritage neighborhood makes a smaller non-residential use appear appropriate for this site. This concludes my presentation. Letitia Shapiro, the applicant's representative, is here to provide comments, and then I'm available for any questions.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. Letitia Shapiro, Morningstar Law Group, 434 Bateville Street, Raleigh. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, and joining me this evening is Justine Hollingshead of Cary Area Emergency Medical Services. I'd like to thank Erin for her presentation, and we're happy to be here tonight to discuss this with you. As mentioned, the facility is no longer a 911 response service, so therefore no longer qualifies for the exemption and requires this rezoning. So what we're hoping to do here is to continue the operation of a facility that has been providing vital services to the community since the 1970s. and be able to continue to provide those services needed in the form of training, services, and community outreach. Cary Area Emergency Medical Services is now Community Emergency Medical Training and Preparedness, and their mission and vision is to foster emergency preparedness and response through education, training, service, and community outreach. They also offer free flu clinics, education and training in CPR, AED, first aid, and partnerships and support with the town's community emergency response team, They also do additional community outreach with blood drives and health fairs, and they've also updated their website to make it very easy for citizens to sign up for those classes. So as noted by staff, the rezoning is consistent with policies in the Cary Community Plan, such as those found in the Work, Serve, and Shape chapters, and will also allow this facility to continue to offer these vital services to the community. So we look forward to your feedback and appreciate your recommendation of approval. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Letitia. Does anyone have any questions for the applicant or the staff? I'll throw it out there for. We'll start with you, Sean. We'll go back down this way and the other. There we go.
Aaron, question, with cutting it out of the mixed-use overlay of the district, what does that do, I'll say, for the utility of it? Why does that make sense? Why doesn't it make sense? What's the justification?
Yeah, that's a great question because, as you've probably recognized, we don't see this often. Often people are asking to come in. We rarely see someone asking to go out. So with this particular site, really all the mixed-use overlay district is doing there is enabling the use of that MXD rezoning, which would require a preliminary development plan. When the applicant approached staff with this proposal, we felt that what they were asking to do, which they had actually latched on to the idea of removing the overlay, and at first we thought, well, that's an odd request, and then in looking at it, understanding they really want to reuse a under 1 acre site for these very limited uses, it felt like applying and requiring that preliminary development plan for such a limited subset of uses, especially with this being right on the edge, that fuzzy edge between a commercial mixed-use center and a adjacent heritage neighborhood, really felt like something that for the scope of uses that was proposed didn't really feel needed. So we actually felt like we could get in support of the removal of that overlay for this particular site and use. Again, knowing the site was already developed with a use that they can no longer use the site for, there were many considerations that went into staff ultimately being comfortable with that portion of the request.
With this rezoning, can they continue to operate with the existing building without redevelopment?
Yes, they could potentially reuse the existing building for that office or trade school or a mix of the two. That is correct.
Thank you.
Ruben?
Does this change in land use require them to add frontage sidewalk, or can they use the infrastructure as it currently exists?
So if they only reuse the existing building, it is very likely that the requirement to add the sidewalk would not apply. My understanding is that really it would be redevelopment of the site, so if they tear down and rebuild a new office, a new trade school, then it would kick in as a requirement at time of development plan.
Okay, thank you.
Diane?
Yeah, I was just wondering about parking when you're doing trainings and having more folks coming. Does that need to be considered?
So we ran some numbers based on, what's out there today and what's proposed, and it looked like, whatever combination of uses, so office and trade school that they do, they're probably going to be somewhere between like 12 to 19 spaces that are needed, which is, I believe, right around what's out there now. Just doing a count from the aerial, I think it's around 15 to 17 spaces. So it's likely that it would be able to, regardless of the final use this is, it's very likely it would be able to meet the number of spaces per our code. Now, if there was something, if there are larger events held there, that's a different question. We would have certain enforcement mechanisms at that time if there were cars parking where they're not supposed to, things of that nature. But the uses themselves appear to be, again, just based on the existing building size and that type of thing. It appears parkable, but of course that would be confirmed during time of development plan. They could not put in a use there that's too big for the existing or new parking to accommodate.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that was my thought and question, so I'm trying to say, so the zoning board of adjustment would need to be involved for what aspect of this?
For a trade school, so a trade school is technically a special use in the office and institutional district. So because this is a conditional use rezoning, they cannot waive an LDO requirement through that process. So if it did develop as a trade school, they would still then need that one extra step of approval on the development plan side, which would be a special use permit through zoning board of adjustment. So they could be looking at things like traffic impacts and that type of thing then.
Okay, but they still can do training here without having a trade school? That's what I'm trying to understand, the difference in a trade school versus what they actually can do without being a trade school.
Right, potentially. And I think you're catching something that, this was a discussion that staff and the applicant had earlier in the process. We wanted to make sure that the use that they ultimately end up with here is viable. So initially, this came in as a request essentially for office uses, and we felt, you know, if this becomes all training, it could start to approach our definition of a trade school. If it ends up being office that maybe has a training room that is used occasionally, that might be able to fall within the office use. We're just not sure at this early stage. We wanted to make sure that they had their bases covered. If this becomes purely a training facility, it's likely it would then be that trade school use. But there's certainly a chance that it could just be office that has some occasional training, and that could be feasible as well.
Okay, so I just want to be clear on our responsibility as far as planning and zoning tonight. If they decide to pursue that, then it would be on the backs of the zoning board of adjustment to determine if there were enough parking spaces for two 20-person classrooms with only 19 parking spaces.
Yes.
Because that's not nearly enough parking spaces if they had 40 people there, unless they all take the bus or half or 3/4 of them take the bus.
Right. And so staff would be looking at that too, a time of development plan. So, you know, the zoning board of adjustment can only approve a reduction of up to 30%, I believe it is, in parking. So there is a certain tipping point where if it got too large, you know, it wouldn't be feasible. I will say, so the trade school parking rate is based on a number per classroom plus a space per every 2 students. So based on the parameters that they've included in their zoning conditions, which limits it both to 20 students and 2 classrooms, under that worst case scenario, it looks like only 14 spaces would be needed. So it's very possible that they could accommodate that use with the parking on the site. But again, that's something that would be reviewed at time of development plan.
Okay. Just, I didn't, yeah, I feel like if we're voting to allow it to be a trade school, then when it comes back, have we done the right thing by the Cary Community Plan for our neighbors and parking on the street? Have we done the right thing if we're allowing 40 students and 2 teachers and office staff to be there? I don't see how that fits in 14.
I think it's 20 students. It's
total.
10 per classroom,
10
2
per
classrooms. Are we understanding that?
Right, so it's 2 related
I'm
limits.
sorry, I did the and rather
Yeah,
than the
yeah,
or. I got
just-
you.
just
My
to
fault.
clarify.
Okay, so 20 students. So 22, yes, okay. Thank you, that was, all right, so 14's the number they come up with, and then there must be a reason for that. So I just want to make sure we weren't having people parking in the street. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Mike?
No questions.
Chris?
My questions have been answered.
All right. Rashawn?
Yes, my question was, is there, let's say they're gonna demo the building and build a new one. What is the height required, like max height for that?
Because of the proximity to the residential zoning here, they would be capped at the 35-foot height
Okay,
limit.
that was my question, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just, so as it relates to infill redevelopment, do we know if they're going to actually redevelop the building? Are we rezoning a building that's going to continue to exist as it is right now?
It could, yes. So they could reuse the existing building, or they could tear down and rebuild. The rezoning doesn't specify, and I'm not sure that we would want them to. I think that allows some flexibility, so they could get in there soon and do something with the existing building, but they could also plan to long-term tear it down and rebuild a new one. It would allow them to continue their current operations, but wouldn't prevent them from tearing down and rebuilding in the future if they wanted a newer space.
Okay. But as we look at sort of redeveloping older buildings, which I really like the idea. But if there's no plan to improve an existing building, I see we're not doing anything to improve the community. So I don't know how you address that, right? But I think the use of redevelopment, I mean, I think you're looking for something better, so.
And if I can just clarify a little bit, so right now it sits vacant because the public safety station doesn't operate out of it anymore because Cary Area EMS is gone. And because it's zoned residential, really that building can't be used for anything right now.
Yeah,
So
okay.
even if they reuse this existing building, it's a vacant building that would then see some use.
Okay.
And I think just along those lines, I mean, really, this is a use, we think of redevelopment, but this is really a repurposing and a request for use. There's an opportunity to redevelop, subject to the conditions that would be set forth, but it's really unique in that there's not an initial plan to make a dramatic change to the physical structure, if I understand that correctly.
Right, and it could really be either. We don't know what their long-term plans are, short-term plans, but this gives some flexibility in how they approach that.
Got you.
Do
Chris, go ahead.
one more question. On that note, if for any reason, I guess further down the road, because I know there's surrounded by 2 other parcels that are adjacent to Kildare Farm that are in the mixed use, that are same ownership, if at some point in the future this was redeveloped and they wanted it to go back to mixed use to make it a full, larger parcel, that would require another rezoning back to the original, right?
It would require a rezoning, yes.
Okay.
And to your point, it would also require compliance with LDO, buffers, all the things that would come with that redevelopment.
Right.
I do have a follow-up question.
Okay, go ahead.
If redeveloped after this rezoning, they'd be required to buffer up against the residential properties?
Yes, that's correct. And there is some buffer there today per the very, very old development plan. It's just, it's not what would be required today.
Got it.
Any additional
Can
questions?
I ask one
Yeah,
more
sure. Go
question?
ahead, Ruben.
I'm asking this because it's a single-family, single-floor, larger building with a parking lot, so it's obviously got a lot of impervious area, which, if they don't change the infrastructure, that just remains. And I should probably know this figure, but if it redevelops, will they be held to a impervious area standard for this size lot?
I would have to double check that. I can verify with our stormwater staff and we can add that to the staff
Okay.
report as it goes forward.
I'm kind of assuming that if it does redevelop, they might be looking at a small parking deck, a multiple-story building to preserve more pervious area.
Possibly. Certainly, they would be allowed to go up another story under this height. Again, this site developed decades ago, probably was not held to today's stormwater
Right,
standards,
right.
certainly. So if it were to tear down, rebuild in the future, those types of things would be addressed at that
Okay,
time.
thank you.
If no further questions, we have a motion in your packet there, and if someone would be comfortable making a motion for 22 REZ 09107.
I move that the board find 24 REZ 09 consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans for the reasons set forth in the staff report, presentation, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Second?
I'll second.
Ruben seconds. So any additional comments, Sean?
No, it looks, again, right now, looking at it more as a reuse than a redevelopment and get the building occupied and moving again.
Anyone else? Any
Same comment.
comments? All right, well, and if that's the case, we would move to a vote. All those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that's it. So I believe that concludes our business this evening, unless anyone else has new business for the floor. Otherwise, I appreciate everyone's participation tonight, and we will call the meeting adjourned.